Hello, our lovely viewers. My name is Sharon Mukisa, and welcome back to the CEFROHT Cafeteria podcast. Now, in our last episode, Dr. Kabanda was able to tell us that children are very vulnerable when it comes to these ultra-processed foods that are very popular on today's market. Now, he made us understand which certain groups are vulnerable, children, women, but in particular today in this episode, we are going to look at children. We are going to look at how they're vulnerable, how these ultra-processed goods impact the health of children in Uganda. With me, we have a senior nutritionist, Miss Sarah, who's going to introduce herself.
Thank you very much, Sharon. I'm Sarah Ngalombe. I used to work at the Ministry of Health, and I now no longer work there, but I have vast experience in the field of food and nutrition, where I've been in the education sector, in the Ministry of Health, where we've dealt with the policy issues. And so this gives me a background to this. And I'm passionate about food and nutrition. And when it comes to food and nutrition in relation to children, we really need to be very, very cautious about that. When you look at children, this segment of children takes a number of phases, and all of those affect their food and nutrition. Now, when you look at food is what we eat to get good nutrition. We do not eat nutrition. So you find that in the past, when we were doing our surveys, we used to look at the nutrition. You see how many children are malnourished, what's the prevalence of vitamin A deficiency, prevalence of iron deficiency. But so when you look at statistics related to food and nutrition, you may find that our statistics in the past are mainly related to nutrition. But in around 2020, the WHO issued guidelines on how we should assess for food. So when we talk about healthy diets, what are we talking about? It's beyond the nutrition, because you've realized before we were just eating to survive, eating to keep healthy by not falling sick from malnutrition. Then as the transition came in, we found that as we were taking in food is not only for nourishment. We were enjoying our food became an active business, everything around food started to change.
Yes.
So in that space, we started concentrating on the healthy diets. And what are the aspects of the healthy diet?
Now, Miss Sarah, before we go to the health diets, you've talked about the transition, and now that food is a business.
Yes.
And children are at a risk because these are highly popularized ultra-processed foods. On televisions, you have some companies also go to schools and try to market their products. So how does that affect the health of children?
Yes. Coming to that, when you look at nutrition as trying to segment the children. When you talk about the children, like we have the first 1,000 days or before conception, there is food taken in by the parent, by the mother, and then she's pregnant for 9 months. And as the food that they are taking in is affecting the development of the baby.
Yes.
And then when the baby is born from zero, that's when we start at zero. Unfortunately, we count the life of the child after birth at zero. But we know we should bear in mind that even before birth, there was that cycle that was continuing. So from 0 to 6 is usually the breastfeeding. And of course, there's also a conversation for that between 0 to 6 months.
Yes.
God created the breast milk, and that's the best. But we find that even in 0 to 6 months, we find that not all our children are getting exclusively breastfed. So we are unfortunately introducing ultra-processed food or feeding at that time, which is very quite dangerous. But of course, the other child doesn't have any option, but they are taking in the breast, they're taking in
Are you
they are
referring
taking
to
infant
like
formula. They are taking in other things apart from the mother's what? Milk. So we're trying to look at what is a child? What stage are we now concentrating at? So 0 to 6 is maybe not a conversation for this day, but it's also very important that at 0 to 6 we do not have any foods other than breast milk. But now you find as we start introducing other foods other than breast milk, that is at 6 months, we start getting in a lot of processed foods coming in. As the child transitions from breast milk to eating food. And then we were talking about the natural foods. So you find that much as we are having our wholesome foods, we find that is when we start introducing these processed foods, which are quick cereals to do what? To process. I mean, they are easily processed, easily prepared, instant what? Instant foods.
instant
You start
porridge?
adding the margarine that we've talked about because you want that fat, you want to have high energy. So you find that the child is vulnerable right from 6 months up to about maybe 2 years as they try to go out and have other foods. But they are dependent on the mother. It's now the mother that is giving the child various foods. Then from 2 months, from 2 years to maybe 6 years, then the child starts preschool. They start getting exposed to school because you talked about the schools.
Yes.
So now if you concentrate at the school is maybe from now children start school at around, where can we say?
Maybe 3 or 4?
3 or 4 years. And we find that in that school environment, the child is exposed to a lot of options, and their diet, they may not get an optimum healthy diet. Such that you find that if you looked at surveys where we are trying to assess their dietary intake during that school age, we have indicators that give us a picture of what a child is taking in. Are they having a diversified diet? Are they eating from all the 4 groups, all the 4 food groups? That is what we assess for. Are they having animal source proteins? Are they having fruits, vegetables? Are they having fats? We also assess for the processed foods. And what is coming out from our recent surveys, we find that children in schools are taking in more. They are more, when we look at foods, we have NCD protect and NCD prevent. Okay. And when you get that ratio of NCD protect and NCD prevent, you should have a ratio which is what? More of NCD protect. But
maybe you could elaborate more on what
NCD
is
protect, NCD
prevent.
What we want is the foods that you take should be able to prevent non-communicable diseases. That is, you are taking in the healthy foods. Like I'm saying, you're having a balanced diet. You're having fruits and vegetables. You're having nuts and pulses. So once we get an assessment and you have a higher ratio of NCD protect, then you're having a healthy what? Diet. But what our surveys are telling us now in schools, we have a higher ratio of NCD risk. In that there are more children are taking in processed foods, children are taking in fats and all these harmful what? Foods. Because when you take it snacks, they're easy to prepare, easy to serve, and those kinds of things. So you find that the diets of schools are more of NCD risk than NCD protect.
Okay. So, Miss Sarah, how dangerous are these ultra-processed foods to the children? How bad is it that we are not realizing right now?
Yes, it's very unfortunate that it's the consumption of these risky foods is on the rise. And these foods contain, now we're looking at the food in general, the foods contain substances that are not very good for our health. First of all, they are high in sugar-sweetened what? Beverages. So they are high in sugars. They are low in natural what? Natural fruits and natural vegetables. And they also take in processed foods which have fats. Fats that have been processed, like we talked in the previous episodes.
Yes.
Whereby in order for you to make these snacks, the fats have to be processed in a way that they are semi-solid and easy to prepare foods like cakes, bread, and that kind of thing. And in the process of making the fats solid, the processes introduce fats which are not very good for our health. And unfortunately, the consumption of foods that have been prepared with these fats that have been processed is on the increase. When you go and take these surveys, you'll find that almost all the children take a fried food. They take a snack that has been what? Processed. And then they also add the margarines. They eat all these street foods, which are very high in industrial processed what? Fats, which are very dangerous to our health and lead to many non-communicable diseases.
Okay. Thank you for that. That has been very elaborate. Speaking about the cakes, the bread, and those other processed foods, what do you think is the role of parents and schools as well in ensuring that children are having a healthier diet? Because we may be eating the matooke, the good food at home, but then now a child will reach school, and that is where she can access the canteens where the ultra-processed foods are. So what do you think are the roles that parents should play, and also the roles that these schools or institutions should play?
What I'm encouraging parents to do is to make sure that they expose their children to a healthy diet right from home, so that children learn to appreciate our natural foods that have not been what? Processed so much.
Yes.
And also, we find that sometimes, and what we're, all this was evolution. Before we had all these foods wholesomely prepared. But as we developed all these technologies of hydrogenation, like Doctor was talking about, came in, and they make food a little bit easier. So what we are trying to do is to make sure that we get alternatives. Because you'll not say that cakes are bad. Cakes are not bad. All these are not bad. They have to be eaten in moderation. And you also have to make sure that the ingredients from which they are produced are not harmful. Don't go through harmful what? Processes. So parents are supposed to be, I would urge parents to be more cautious about what they expose their children to. Right now, as we transition to all these other fast foods, let the parents make sure that they give their children healthy options.
Yes.
Avoid too much. Let their palate develop. Use the natural flavors. Make the food interesting. And also have more time in food preparation for your children.
Yes, and what about the schools, the institutions? What can they do better to ensure? Because now this is where children are most of the year. They are in schools. So what can those institutions do better to ensure that children are having a healthier diet?
Yeah, the schools can set up guidelines and regulations. And of course, the Ministry of Education has a policy, a school feeding guideline, whereby it also limits, guides the school on what to serve their food. So school administrators should be very mindful about the suppliers of food and the food that is coming in to their children. Make sure it's more wholesome, have less of the processed foods, and also teach their children what is good and what is not healthy.
Thank you very much. I think that is a very clear message to the institutions and schools out there to be mindful of the suppliers, because food starts from way back, from where it comes from, the farm, the processes that it has gone through until it reaches your plate. So lastly, Miss Sarah, given the fact that this topic is about children and their health and these ultra-processed foods, I'd like to understand, what do you think would be the effect if we have a generation that is sick? Because now these children are the next generation. So how would that look like for Uganda if we cannot save the children right now from ultra-processed foods?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, like you're all aware, we are having a lot of cancers, we are having a lot of heart diseases that are manifesting in children. That means that something went wrong. And that's something we have identified is through what we are exposing our children to, particularly in food. And it is preventable. If we are conscious of what we eat, we'll be able to prevent these incidences of NCDs, cardiovascular diseases, heart diseases, cancers, and the like.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think you have really explained and expounded on the advice you've given to parents, to institutions, to individuals out there to ensure that they are having a healthier diet. But then we have an issue of the popularity of these ultra-processed food. How can we make the local food now more appealing? Because when I look at some processed foods, they have, very vibrant packaging. They are attracting to children. But then, which is not the same with the matooke, with nuts. I'll be like, no. So how do you think that we can make maybe these local foods more appealing to children, more appealing to even individuals in general?
Yes, thank you very much. Even before we go to, when we are still talking about the processed foods, processed foods can be good if the fats that are being used, if they reformulate. That's why we are calling upon the industries to reformulate their products and avoid the use of these harmful processes that create the bad fat.
In other words, you're saying there is a way it can be possible.
Yes, there is a way to make sure that the fat is not very dangerous. Of course, you have to limit the amount of fat that you take. But if you are to limit the amount, if you are to limit that bad fat, which we call industrially processed fats or fatty acids, we are calling upon the industry to avoid using harmful processes that lead to trans fatty acids. So much as if the industry would avoid using those products or those processes, then we would have these foods still on our markets.
And a bit healthier.
Okay, because you will not eliminate them. You will not eliminate them completely.
Yes.
But it's also important to popularize these issues of healthy diets, eating good food, the food choices, such that even as the parents, the children go to eat their food, they are aware that if I took this, because you may have some issues like labeling of the foods, if they can read on the label, and then on the labels there's usually something about the ingredients that are in that food, and which is not it's not a practice that is common in Uganda. But we want to urge parents, school administrators, and also the industries to label their foods properly, and then also to make sure that even the children as consumers, the parents as consumers, if they are to buy those processed foods, they read the labels and know which foods to avoid and which ones that are healthful.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, just as Dr. Kabanda always says, knowledge is power. We've heard from Miss Sarah, who has taken us through the vulnerability of children vis-a-vis these ultra-processed foods. So parents out there, institutions, schools, ensure that you opt for a balanced diet because it is important. These children are the future of tomorrow. They are the next generation. We cannot have a sick generation. So stay tuned for more episodes of the CEFROHT Cafeteria podcast. I have been your host, Sharon Mukisa. Until next time.